You've probably heard about Gog and Magog. The names pop up in conversations about the end times, usually described as this mysterious, unstoppable enemy that nobody can quite identify. Popular theories today often point to one specific modern superpower, Russia. But here's the thing that most of those theories get wrong. Ezekiel's original audience, the ancient Israelites living in exile in Babylon, knew exactly times who he was talking about. And the truth is, so can we, if we just know where to look. Today, we're not speculating. We're using ancient maps, historical records, and the biblical text itself to decode the real identity of Gog and Magog. The answer might just change how you read prophecy forever. By the end of this video, you will understand which ancient nations Ezekiel was actually naming, why times he chose those specific territories, and why modern interpretations often miss the original, powerful meaning of his message. We are going to separate myth from fact. If you've ever wanted to understand biblical prophecy through history instead of just guesswork, you are in the right place. So, let's start with the biggest misconception. Is it true that Gog and Magog are just mysterious entities that we can't really identify? The short answer is no. Ezekiel chapter 38 gives us a very explicit list of nations in this confederation. He names Meshech and Tubal, which historical and archaeological records confirm were kingdoms in 7th century before Common Era, Anatolia, what is now modern-day Turkey. He names Persia to the east. He names Cush, which was ancient Ethiopia, and Put, which was ancient Libya, to the south. He names Gomer, identified by scholars as the Cimmerians, a nomadic people north of the Black Sea. This isn't a vague, unknowable force. For Ezekiel's audience, this was a specific ring of nations, the most distant and fearsome peoples they knew, surrounding Israel from every direction. He wasn't being cryptic, he was being geographically precise. But that leads to the next myth, that the identities don't matter because it's all symbolic anyway. While there is deep symbolism here, the specific nations he chose are the key to unlocking it. Textual analysis, like that detailed in the comprehensive Wikipedia entry on Gog and Magog, shows this prophecy was likely composed later than the chapters around it, addressing a specific historical moment. Ezekiel deliberately picked these remote nations because they had reputations for violence and mystery. He was creating what scholars call an archetypal enemy. He used real places that his audience recognized as threats from the edges of their known world to symbolize a total, overwhelming force. The historical reality of these places actually strengthens the prophecy's meaning. It doesn't weaken it. Which brings us to the big one. Is this prophecy about modern Russia? This idea is popular, but it requires reading modern politics backward into an ancient text. The nations Ezekiel names were real kingdoms that ceased to exist in their original forms thousands of years ago. Meshech was in Turkey, not Moscow. Persia was centered in what is now Iran. Cush was in Africa. If Ezekiel's vision was about a 21st century superpower, the text would look very different. The confusion often comes from trying to make ancient maps fit our modern ones, instead of understanding the world as Ezekiel and his audience saw it. And one final point of confusion. Are the Gog and Magog in Ezekiel the same as the Gog and Magog in the book of Revelation? They are not. A careful reading shows these are two separate prophecies describing very different events. In Ezekiel, the invasion comes from the north, and it's followed by a 7-year period of cleaning up the battlefield. In Revelation chapter 20, the attack comes from the 4 quarters of the earth, and is immediately followed by the final judgment and the creation of a new heaven and earth. The shared names show a recurring theme, but they don't describe the same event. So, if it's not a mystery, and it's not Russia, what is the core truth here? Ezekiel wasn't writing a riddle for us. He was writing a message of ultimate hope for his fellow exiles in Babylon. They were a defeated people. Their nation was destroyed. And Ezekiel gives them this vision of a day when God will protect them from an alliance of every terrifying enemy they could imagine, all at once. His audience knew where Meshech was. They knew about the armies of Persia. They understood the directional threat of the far north. When they heard this prophecy, they pictured a real, if divinely orchestrated threat from the edges of their world. This wasn't random. It was a calculated message. Even if every distant, dangerous nation on earth conspires against you, God's plan for your restoration will not be stopped. When we decode this using historical context, two things become clear. First, the prophecy is deeply connected to the real-world geopolitics of the 6th century before Common Era. Second, understanding this history doesn't diminish the prophecy's spiritual power. It times enhances times it. It shows us a God who speaks into real history, to real people, in a language they can understand. So, what can we take away from this? First, specificity matters. Biblical prophecies often reference real, identifiable places and people. Grounding our interpretation in historical evidence protects us from wild speculation. Second, context is everything. Always ask, who was the original audience? Understanding what these words meant to them is the first step to understanding what they mean for us today. And third, it's okay for there to be different views on the timing. Scholars have various ideas about when this prophecy might find its ultimate fulfillment, but disagreeing on the times when times doesn't invalidate the evidence for times, who times Ezekiel was originally talking about. Here's a practical first step you can take right now. Find a map of the ancient Near East from around the 7th or 6th century before Common Era. Mark the locations Ezekiel named Meshech and Tubal in Anatolia, Persia to the east, Cush and Put in Africa, Gomer to the north. Just draw a circle connecting them around the land of Israel. That simple visual exercise will change how you read Ezekiel 38 forever. The big takeaway isn't that the prophecy has no future meaning. It's that the Bible rewards careful, historical investigation. When we treat it as a historical document, times as well as times a spiritual one, we unlock a richer, more accurate understanding. You don't have to be a professional scholar to do this. You just need a map and the curiosity to ask that one powerful question. Asterisk. What would Ezekiel's original audience have understood? Asterisk. That question can transform how you read. For links to the historical sources and maps we talked about today, be sure to check out the description below. Now, I want to hear from you. What surprised you the most about the actual identity of these nations? Drop a comment below and let me know which myth you're now reconsidering. And if you found this historical approach to decoding prophecy helpful, subscribe for more deep dives into what the biblical texts really say. Thanks for watching.